from Ben Katz, it does feel that's kind of a very Delver-esque strategy, right? You just make one threat, protect it.
Exactly. It's definitely just your pretty typical tempo, aggro control type of strategy.
At turn 1. So Ben on the play here in the 8-0 table. Table 1 starts with Street Wraith going to 18.
Well, Katz out of the bag.
Here we go. Yeah, I mean, at 8-0, a lot of time players actually just know what their opponent's going to be on, right?
Right, and sometimes you might be unsure, right? It's a big haul, it's a big tournament. If you've been winning all day, maybe your games have been going long when you're playing a blue-white control deck like Miracles. But Watery Grave and Street Wraith are pretty much dead giveaways.
Remember, those Watery Graves, by design, they play 4 Watery Graves and 1 Underground Sea. They want to take the damage there as Ben goes to 16 for a turn 1 Delver. And Aiden here setting up with Ponder. So yes, look at the threats in Ben's deck. The 4 Delver Secrets, the 4 Death Shadow, and the 2 Gurmag Angler. It's 10 threats total. You don't really get around to casting Street Wraith very often.
But you can reanimate it.
You can reanimate it. That does sometimes happen. Yeah, I guess you can count those 2 reanimates as threats number 11 and 12.
Right, and that ends up being a much bigger deal than one would assume for actually a pretty funny reason. So, Swords to Plowshares is already a pretty good card.
Yeah.
Have you ever had your opponent have 2 Death Shadows into play and get to Swords to Plowshares, one of them?
They both die.
Yeah, well, one of them gets exiled, actually, but...
Okay. One of them dies, and then one of them goes away.
Right, so you'll frequently run into an issue where you run out of ways to pay life, so a 1-mana way to lose 5 life and develop a threat is huge.
All right, a Thought Seize here from Ben. He goes on to 12. He cycled into it. C is a hand from Aiden. So it has second land, 2 Force of Wills, back to basics, accumulated knowledge, Ponder, and Swords to Plowshares.
Well, that is the best card in the matchup, right there, Swords to Plowshares.
So you just is it any more complicated? You just take them, right?
For the most part, you're going to be interested in taking it. There is certainly an argument for staring it back to basics and going ahead and dealing with that one, since those types of effects, whether they're good or bad, sometimes they're just lights out if your hand isn't set up to combat them. And we see Katz with just a handful of non-basic lands. You know, you can rebuild if you get your creatures wiped. You cannot rebuild if you just can't cast spells.
Well, and Ben's deck doesn't even have the basic island. The 1 basic land in the deck is a swamp.
Right. And a lot of the things that you're doing are just 1 mana black plays, so it's hard to justify the basic island.
Now Ben right now down to 10. It's 2 Street Wraiths, 2 Shocklands, and a Thoughtseize. Hits in for 1. That's enough that Death Shadow is a play. It's a 3/3 currently. Last card in his hand looked to be Delver of Secrets, Wasteland, and he's got 1 other hanging out.
And I really actually like this line. Katz is trying to be a little bit more aggressive, say, you know what, maybe I don't need my mana for the rest of the game. If I just put, 5-ish power on the battlefield, 5 or 10 power, I'll kill you if you just take a turn off to cast this back to basics.
Swords to Plowshares was gone. Aiden, however, unfazed, he ponders, keeps on top again as he plays the fetch land. So something he likes here.
That's got to feel good, and with the fetch land, it's hard for Katz to know how many of those cards are things that Brier wants.
So what would be the best card here? The kind of thing, I mean, I'm looking at Terminus, perhaps?
Terminus is up there. Swords to Plowshares is incredible. Those are the big 2 that come to mind here. Take, for example, if Katz had just flipped this transformed this Delver of Secrets into an Insectal Aberration, Swords to Plowshares would have dealt with both of them.
Aiden down to 14 on the attack. Now, another Death Shadow in Katz's hand. He actually doesn't have any way to combat Terminus except, and tell me if this is crazy, he could waste, if he's really just converted about Terminus, he could wasteland this fetch.
Ooh.
Right.
Well, that is true.
Right, because either the Blight mana's gone, or if Aiden fetches in response, then the Terminus would be gone.
Right, and there's certainly a point where we see 2 more 1-drops in Katz's hand. Katz might just be interested in going, gotcha. Just put a bunch of 1-drops onto the table and say, I don't even care if I cast this Force of Will.
So here's another 1-drop. And Ben just says go, and it is Terminus. So that's going to sweep up the creatures here.
And the worst part here is Katz even knows that Brier has Force of Will in hand.
Yeah, Force of Will pitching blue card. And on Ben's side, he's hoping this Force of Will was good, but if Aiden, the thing of what I don't like is that puts your opponent on a level. If your opponent top determine it, Aiden knew that there was Force blue card here. and Aiden topped the Terminus. So he's only going to do that if he can beat your Force of Will.
Exactly. This is definitely a spot where, it feels like Katz maybe is just planning to try and slog through those cards, but that might not be a winning strategy when Brier has this prison card in Back to Basics in hand.
Yeah. And now, Ben, remember, he committed that second Death Shadow. He's going to have to rebuild, but he doesn't have much time to do so. Aiden follows up with a Ponder.
Right, and there's an uncomfortable tension here where, unless the top card of the deck was exactly that Swords to Plowshares, you could even have a read on what Brier kept on top with that Ponder.
Going back to Aiden, 3 basics. He still has that Back to Basics in hand. Now, Ben's lands are untapped, but he'll go ahead and make the enchantment. Katz does Spell Pierce.
All right, you do what you got to do.
Aiden's thinking about fighting over it.
This is definitely something that you want to be fighting over.
Okay, yeah, he pitches Brainstorm to it. That is definitely a fight.
Yeah, that basically, there's no way to get this Back to Basics off the battlefield out of a Tamir deck.
Another land from Katz. His hand is just Wasteland right now. Brier just has to rebuild. Now, he did get rid of his Brainstorm, so he might be a bit slower on the rebuild. But it looks like he has another one, so maybe not.
Whew. We're doing it.
Looking at the ways that Brier turns the corner, he has 3 Monastery Mentor, 3 Jace the Mind Sculptor, 3 Snapcaster Mage as his ways to pull ahead.
Right, and at this point, it's more just a matter of Brier getting around to winning the game.
Right.
We know that some of Katz's best cards are just on the bottom of his library, and even if he plays them, Brier still has a good bit of time at this point.
And Ben started to untap, but that's not going to happen. He will make Delver of Secrets. Used a dual land there because there are no basic islands in his deck to fetch up. Back to Aiden we go.
And ironically, Delver is not the threat that Katz was hoping to see here. That's one of the weaker things that he could have top-decked.
Yeah. So, right, you have to look at these lands as he has a limited amount of blue mana left in his deck.
Right. Without something like Daze getting involved to return it to your hand, you only get to cast, 2 more blue spells this game?
Yeah. From Aiden, Snapcaster Swords to Plowshares. Given that, I guess it doesn't feel bad that card's Delver of Secrets. I'm not sure of another blue card I'd want to spend the mana on.
Right, and it's fine that it's a threat.
Right.
And that's the big thing to be looking at here. It's more just that Katz's disruptive package, his cantrips, etc., are things that are just turned off now.
Right, yeah. Every Brainstorm he draws, he just can't be spending his blue mana that way. They're not cards.
Exactly. That's just skipping a draw step against a control deck.
And Aiden, here's the clock. Snapcaster Mage swings in.
That's a real croc.
Oh, absolutely. And second accumulated? No, first accumulated knowledge. Aiden actually exiled the first one to Force of Will. Yeah, it doesn't count it.
Oh, did he draw another one? That's just clean living. Oh, is this the super accumulated knowledge planeswalker, otherwise known as Jace the accumulated knowledge sculptor?
That one draws a few more cards than accumulated knowledge.
Technically?
Over time it will, I suppose. Here's Jace. And also, this to me feels like it closes things out. Because now, even if Ben does top deck a threat, like a Gurmag Angler or a Death Shadow, Jace can just continue to unsummon it, and I don't really see a way that Ben can stop that.
Yep, I completely agree. Katz doesn't really have any kind of reach.
Yeah, there's no burn,
creatures,
no haste.
No burn spells, haste, as you mentioned. So at this point, the door is more or less closed.
Yeah, looking at ways he could get through it. It's going to be tough. Maybe he can show us something, and there is nothing to show other than Aiden Brier taking game number 1 with Miracles. A well-set-up Terminus that was protected ended up being the difference there for Aiden.
Right, and I want to go back to that line you had suggested about wastelanding Flooded Strand before Aiden had a chance to draw anything.
Yeah, I mean, right, so it's really hard because to make that play, you just have to be looking at your opponent and saying, Terminus is the top card of your deck, here is my play, right?
Yep. Right, but that's at that point when Katz develops that many cards onto the table, you're not losing to Swords to Plowshares.
You're not losing
anymore.
to anything. Well, I mean, he did put 2 Death Shadows out, so maybe he does lose to Swords.
That's fair. That's a fair point, but even then you still have an Insect Elaboration.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did think about it. I hadn't decided whether I'd actually, I want to say that's the kind of thing I could pull the trigger on, but I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to wasting a fetch land is always. That's those weird things, right? We have to think, am I really doing this?
I care way more about feeling smart than I do winning games of Magic. So if that line is even on my radar,
You're just doing it?
Oh, I'm doing
nice.
it all the time. I want my opponent to know how smart I think I am.
I think if you're not going to make that line, I don't like playing the second Death Shadow.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that. That gives you at least, you get to play around it a little
Right.
bit more that way.
If I'm not going to play around it, then I was like, once he plays the Death Shadow, I think you want to waste the fetch.
Yep, I completely agree with that.
Well, let's look at the sideboards, though, for the players here. On Ben Katz's side, 3 Surgical Extraction, 2 Dreadnought, 2 Liliana, 2 Bitter Blossom. That's actually a lot of bigger mid-game cards. An Engineer Explosives, Throne of Geth, Diabolic Edict, Marsh Casualties, Echoing Truth, and Liliana of the Veil. How big does he want to go here?
So a lot of what you want to do is still just be able to apply pressure against what Brier is doing, but you do need ways to actually slog through Terminus and Swords to Plowshares. So we're very likely just going to see him go a little bit bigger post-board in order to not just get colded by 8 cards in Aiden Brier's, 16 cantrip deck or some nonsense like that. We have 3 Ponders and a Preordain? Oh, excuse me, that's Cat. You're right.
That's
right.
Katz. Katz has a 4. Yep, it's a 3/1. He didn't play. He's 1 Preordain over the 4th Ponder.
All right, and then we have 4 Ponder, 4 Brainstorm, 2 Preordain, 4 Accumulated Knowledge.
So much spinning.
Out of Brier's deck. That doesn't even get into Snapcaster and Jace.
Yeah, his deck finds it finds its cards really well.
There is so much.
All right. On Aiden's side, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Flusterstorm, a Disenchant, Containment Priests, 2 Celestial Purge, don't mind that. Back to Basics, Vendilion Click, Supreme Verdict, Spell Snare, and then this is a nice one. He's got a Humility in the sideboard.
Humility is a nice card. I really like it out of exactly Aiden Brier's deck here. It's something that it sort of kills Death Shadows. They aren't shrinking themselves anymore, but if they're 1/1s, are they really there?
They don't do too much.
No, they do 1.
They do 1. They do exactly 1.
And next turn, you know what they do? 1.
1 more.
There.
1 more. That's about it. If you haven't had a chance to check out the Star City Games sale, make sure you do. Switching every week. We have hundreds of singles on sale. The ones on this week are on sale, though, through Monday, so make sure you check them out. StarCityGames.com/sale.
Did you say go.starcitygames.com?
No, it's just Go. You can. It'll still get you there.
It's go.starcitygames.com.
All right, Go.starcity. There we go.
You did so good, Matthias. I'm so proud of you.
I'm sure without the first part, people just wouldn't know where to find it.
Look, the script is good. We're sticking to the script.
Our site's not.
So you mentioned the Celestial Purges out of the sideboard of the Miracles deck. You can also check out the sideboard using the Cardboard Live extension there on our Twitch page.
Yeah, it should be on the screen here.
It is great, and if you're on mobile, there's a little puzzle piece at the top of chat that you
Yeah,
can click.
it took me so long to figure that out on mobile. And then I was like, oh, it sucks. Stick Set doesn't work on mobile. And someone said, it does, right?
Aw,
Yeah.
you're
it's
so
a
old.
puzzle. Yeah, well, I was clicking the screen. I wanted the drop-down menus on the screen. Yeah, you have to hit the puzzle piece if you're on your phone. It's there. You could do it. Okay.
How do I work this thing?
Yeah. Street Wraith cycled for Ben. Turn 2 Brainstorm. Both players are setting up for now. Ben building, he does have a Death Shadow in hand, so a threat at the ready. If he wants to shuffle away both those cards, he could make the Death Shadow this turn. It looks like he may do just that.
Right, so he gets to fetch shock down to 13, and then if he has something else, he can make a Death Shadow. Looks like he'll should be looking for 1 more piece.
Yeah, right now the Shadow's a 0/0. That doesn't do much.
Oh, it dies.
It does. So I think we might just have Preordain instead. It's going to be the play. Thoughtseize and Ponder the top 2. See if he wants either of those. Don't mind Thoughtseize here.
Right, this is one where you're very likely just trying to pick apart the resources of the Miracles deck, specifically taking the Haymakers that are able to pick apart what you are doing.
Looks like he's interested in both. Puts both on top. Fair enough. And he'll start on Thoughtseize going down to 11. Shadows are now live. Aiden's thinking about countering here.
Right, and a lot of times just your tempo opponent having the information of what they need to weave their cards through is actually worth quite a bit. So using a counterspell on this when you know it's going to be taking one of your cards anyway isn't that far-fetched.
Yeah, Flusterstorm appears to be in Aiden's hand, but that doesn't counter it just yet. Not unless he does something like Brainstorm. Yeah, he was thinking about Brainstorm into Flusterstorm, I believe. Let's look at the hand. It's 2 Celestial Purge, a Swords to Plowshares. Goodness, that's a lot of removal. A Brainstorm and a Flusterstorm.
Well, Ben Katz might win tomorrow. That is how long this will be going.
Yeah.
Let's go and buckle in for a long game here.
Yeah, he doesn't have anything like True Name Nemesis that would just blow out this hand.
No, all of those threats that we had mentioned from his sideboard, the Planeswalkers, the enchantments,
they're black.
They're all black cards, and they're all permanent cards, and they look so good in the exile pile. From Brier's side of the table, that is.
What's the more threatening removal spell, Celestial Purge or Swords to Plowshares?
It depends how hard Katz is planning to lean on these Death Shadows and having multiple creatures out at once. If his plan is to just one-for-one Brier out and never expose multiple creatures to Terminus, then Swords to Plowshares is probably not, it's going to be a little bit worse since it's not hitting more than one thing at a time, and Celestial Purge can hit things like Bitter Blossom, your Lilianas, and so forth. So we're more than likely going to see him taking that one.
He does take one of the purges, down to 11. I mean, it feels bad, but he's got a Death Shadow. I mean, does he just wait to commit it to the board?
There's a point where you're likely just going to have to slog through this removal anyway, and your dazes are better the earlier in the game that you cast them. But if you only have the one copy, then you're probably just going to want to go ahead and do it now, where you're going to be gaining less life off of that Swords to Plowshares if Brier pulls the trigger.
Oh, that makes sense.
Rather than it undoing, say, 5 or 6 points of life loss or life gain.
And I like this from Ben. Before Death Shadow, he uses a Ponder, looks at the top 3, sees land, and something he wants. So he takes the thing he wants, then cracks a fetch land.
Big fan of this line.
Interested to see what he does with this fetch, though. He's down to 10. He could go down to 8 off the Watery Grave, but he knows it's going to get swords, so he almost wants to get like an Underground Sea, but...
Yeah, and there's even a point where it could even be strong to just find your basic swamp here.
Back to Basics is a card that Aiden could draw.
Right, and next turn is going to be Brier's 3rd turn.
Yeah. Brier's going to Brainstorm.
So
he'd love to find Back to Basics right here.
Exactly. So if the top 3 cards have a Back to Basics, or if the top 3 cards do and then Brier Brier decides to shuffle, he gets another look.
It looks like Ben actually has a daze, so maybe he's fine with that. If Aiden taps out and doesn't play removal, it could be a win.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Unlike the modern deck, there aren't Timur Battle Ragers in this Shadow deck, so it is unlikely that Brier's not just going to get another untap step after this.
Back to Brier we go. Did not crack the fetch land. Looks like he wanted everything that was there.
Is that 2 Monastery Mentors hiding out in hand?
Might be. He's going to Swords, so Ben back up to 13. I like the cleanliness when you use Swords of a Shadow. The answer is they go to 13.
Oh.
Always.
It's a feature, not a bug. Well, depending on which side of the table.
Follow from Ben Katz, Gurmag Angler. Will that earn the Celestial Purge? It certainly might.
I just like how excited to be here Gurmag Angler is.
Yeah.
It's like, hi.
It's a 5. It's a 5/5 look. Put in the work. It's going to show up.
Katz is starting to build up a good suite of permission here.
Yeah, it's not bad. So he has what? We have Daze, and then there's more. It's 4 blue cards that his hand is.
One of them's a Force of Will, and the other 2 are cantrips.
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, let's have a Brainstorm, a Force of Will.
It might be 2 dazes.
Okay.
I know there is a Force, there is a Brainstorm, and there is a Daze, and the 4th one's a little hard to tell.
Well, 2 fetches from Brier. It oftentimes means Jace, though. This is the board. Jace is not going to be any good here. no way he can fight through enough this much days.
Right, and Brier likely has days on his radar. This is more than likely back to basics.
Okay. It's Monastery Mentor. That'll play here too. Now, what do you think about fetching up to 4 before doing that?
This is fantastic. Earlier in the day, we actually have seen some situations where you preemptively fetch, specifically with Monastery Mentor, to make sure that once it hits the battlefield, you have priority to go ahead and cast something like Ponder in order to instantly get value off of your Monastery Mentor. You don't want to be in a spot where your Mentor resolves, you fetch, and then they kill it with your fetch on the stack, and you just don't get a token.
Force of Will, exiling Daze for Ben Katz. And Brier will Flusterstorm. That works, but Daze from Ben counters the Mentor a second time.
It's always nice when you don't get too caught up in the counter war and you go, no.
Back to the original one?
There we go. You know what? Yeah, you counter my counter spell. Also, I'm going to counter your original spell again.
Hit for 5, Aiden down to 13. But Ben used all his counter magic there, Force of Will and 2 Dazes, and there's still that Celestial Purge. Both players know about it.
Right, he's kind of starting to run on empty at this point. But he is attacking, and that's what's important.
Second Monastery Mentor for Brier. Looks to be the play. He's not going to make that Celestial Purge just yet. His hand is Accumulated Knowledge, Brainstorm, and Celestial Purge.
Right, and the only value that this Gurmag Angler actually has is in combat. It doesn't have any other effects other than being a big, cheap idiot.
Yeah. Main phase Brainstorm for Brier.
So now that Brier is producing chump blockers, this
gonna work.
Just not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Katz is just going to be spinning his wheels.
I mean, he can start to mow his way through them, but the problem is that Aiden usually will play more than one spell per turn, so it actually doesn't run out.
Exactly. One of two things happens. Aiden casts one spell a turn, or he continues developing his mana and starts to cast these bigger spells in his deck.
No land there for Brier, so he passes back. Let's see if Katz can get this Mentor off the board while the mana's down.
Missing your land drop while you have a Monastery Mentor in hand that's a power move.
Yeah. It feels bad because you want to play more spells, but it usually means that if you get the next turn, it's very nice.
Legacy is not known for its big, clunky spells.
So swinging from Angler, takes care of the token. Katz brainstorms to follow up.
Ooh. It looks like he picked up a copy of Dismember.
Well, that'll play here pretty well, take care of the Mentor, which he needs to do.
Right, and it also puts him in a healthy range to deploy a Shadow if he finds one.
Yeah, and he did find that Dismember. And if that's what he has, he wants to go for it immediately. Certainly doesn't want to let Aiden get an untap. So that's what he'll do. I think he's debating between how much life he wanted to pay.
Yeah.
Decides for the full 4, goes to 8, takes care of the Mentor.
And I really like paying the extra life here when there are cards like Swords to Plowshares present. If this Gurmag Angler gets Swords, you want to be able to fetch and then deploy a Death Shadow afterwards.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's so many ways you gain life. You want to make sure you get back, maintain the ability to go below 13. Ben fetching here, so down to 7 now. We'll see what land he wants to get. Looks like it's 5. I think he's going for shock again.
It looks like it was a Death Shadow in hand. It could be that. Could be reanimating Monastery Mentor.
All right, confirmed he's actually just in the fetch right now, so at 7.
Possible he has one less shock land in his deck than he thought he did.
Not entirely sure you want to shock here. I actually kind of want to get the Swamp. Back to basics might be more important than that additional 2 points.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's what he does, playing it a little safe. 6/6 Shadow is big enough, and that's what he'll make.
I'm not sure. I liked the line of having the basic before. I don't like it here because it's lethal.
Yeah, now if he has another way in his hand, like his last card is
a shock
land, it's fine. It's fine.
Right.
But you are right. He has 11 power in play right now with Aiden at 13. Okay, agreed. It looks like could be nice to have that last point. Monastery Mentor, that's the last one. Number 3 from Aiden was the top card. And he will again brainstorm to put a blocker into play. He still has that Celestial Purge from the beginning of the game hiding out.
It's definitely a spot where they've just been fighting to try and for control of the Monastery Mentor, right?
Yeah.
Brier's going, all right, here's my Mentor. Do something about it right now, and Katz has been able to do that. And if Katz misses, the game just becomes so far out of reach.
Right. Now, this is the last Mentor. If Katz has one more removal spell, Aiden will have to win through Snapcasters and Jaces.
Snapcaster is not that different than Monastery
No.
Mentor when your opponent's at 7.
That's a good point. Yeah, we saw Aiden close with that game 1. It was not too big of an issue. Puts 2 back with the Brainstorm, finds a fetch land. And to Ben Katz we go. Just the Mentor as a blocker. Feels like Aiden will have to make a play here of some kind. Oh, no, wait, there's a second blocker. Apologies. There's that 1 Monk token. See the Brian Koval token hanging out at the bottom of the screen. Swing. This is for 11. Aiden will chump the Shadow, taking 5 drops to 8. He's hoping he can untap with that Mentor. 2 cards in hand. He knows the top part of his deck as well. And from Katz, though, a Brainstorm finds him Spell Pierce and Surgical Extraction.
Surgical Extraction is a preemptive answer to that Celestial Purge.
Right, because there's one in the graveyard.
Right.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in that, especially with the way this board shapes out. Feels like that's the play.
It's very nice. Your line at this point is just trying to blank spells out of Brier's hand anyway.
Yeah.
Since you need Mentor to not be able to trigger.
And Aiden does get to untap, so now that opportunity is gone.
The other side of that is if Brier were to, say, cast a Terminus or something to that effect, you can snag it out of his hand with the Miracle Trigger on the stack.
Now, there's a possibility, and actually I think a likelihood, that after the Brainstorm on that last turn, the Purge is probably not in Aiden's hand. It's probably the top card of his deck.
That's entirely possible, but it also just means that Brier isn't going to have it.
Yeah, he's not going to top deck it. Yeah, I mean, it might still be the play. You know, surgically a card out of his hand is way more appealing than surgically one off the top of his deck. But you are right. If the end result is you don't want him drawing Celestial Purge, that is the way to do it.
Right. The avenue that Katz has to try and win this game is for Brier to just brick.
Right.
Simply put, just don't give Brier any chances to draw spells. And if you're letting him draw the spell, then
he's drawing the spell.
That's exactly. And there are so many instants in Brier's deck with this much mana being available. It's so unlikely that you actually tag a card out of his hand.
So Brier does draw the Celestial Purge. He casts it main phase, making a Monk token, exiling away the Death's Shadow. And we're not counting prowess this turn, I guess, but it's pretty close. And both players at 7. Next turn, he could be putting together something looking lethal.
Uh-oh.
Snapcaster Mage from Aiden Brier. Swords to Plowshares. And Ben Katz will Spell Pierce. Now, just want to confirm here that Aiden does have the token. Yeah, he did. Pays for it, but Katz gets to keep the Angler, but it's still on Brier's side looking good. He swings in for 4 with the Mentor.
Right, and this is a spot where you don't really want to be fetching because you're at such a low life total against such a massive battlefield.
So
but it's that
2.
or die.
Yeah, down 1. What will it take for him to get through this?
Yeah, it's at this point I'm ready to call it. Brier has a Council's Judgment in his hand.
Okay. Well, let's see. I mean, one card would certainly any instant will work. Daze on Ben Katz's side won't work. He dazes to he says, this taps all your guys, right?
I will make you lose all of your creatures and please lose that game.
And that's going to be game and match. Aiden Brier on Miracles. He is your 9-0 player here at the end of